Hey everybody, welcome back to the Menschwarmers, your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing wonderful on this beautiful Pesach week. I'm burning all my chametz. I am asking God for forgiveness for the chametz that I have not burnt. I'm looking forward to what looks to be maybe a virtual seder this weekend for my family. How about you?
You're already ahead of the curve because as we've talked about before, your wife has celiac disease, so your house has very little chametz.
Yes,
we
live a Passover. We sort of live a Passover lifestyle. You can never be safe. We always have the blood over our door. We always keep frogs, and our showers do rain with blood. So we're always just ready we're basically living in ancient Egypt, in Midtown Toronto.
That's good. I should tell our listeners I did get the COVID this week, unfortunately.
The novel coronavirus? You've been struck down with the novel coronavirus.
It's no longer novel. It's actually worn its welcome, I would say. I got it. I think probably either when I went to the Final Four in New Orleans or when I went to the Jays home opener.
Both of those really just petri dishes of sixth wave bacteria.
So if I sound a little off, it's just because I have very minor cold symptoms, but I feel like I'm pretty much done it.
So that leads me to a question before we get into the real meat, or I should say the shank of our episode. Is there a disease live sporting event combination that you'd be willing to risk X disease for Y sporting event? Like you got COVID at the Final Four. That's pretty up there.
I saw some pretty great games.
And some of the greatest Final Four in memory. John Shire really just coming in, for the Jewish angle. That was maybe worth getting COVID.
Yeah, we saw the beginning of the John Shire era by virtue of it being the end of the Mike Krzyzewski era.
Exactly. But let's
no, that was great. I mean, I certainly went on a vacation, I should say, for the first time in 2 years.
It's a working vacation.
With my eyes open.
You worked on the podcast.
Of course. And I definitely went with my eyes open to this could happen and it's not the end of the world probably because I'm youngish and healthy and all that. But
and triple vaccinated.
And triple vaccinated, yes. It's hard to say worth it or anything like that. I am isolating in my basement because my wife was away when I got, or shortly after I got home when I tested positive. She came back. She has tested negative. My daughter's tested negative, and it's just like we're gonna try and keep it that way because if we can. So hopefully the quarantine doesn't last much longer. But yeah, I've just been sort of a subterranean person the last few days.
A chud.
It's starting to get to me. Yeah.
So then just to go back to the question here,
is there what disease would I risk?
It's Master Sunday. Tigers in contention. Daniel Berger is in second. The final group, you get to spend the whole day following around. Maybe a light cancer.
What am I going to get the disease or just risk?
I think you have the risk of getting the disease. Going to get the disease is a different equilibrium. Different, but I think we'll stick with risk. But it's airborne. Yeah. It is an airborne disease.
An airborne disease. I don't know. I would definitely risk mono, I would say, for most things. COVID, apparently, I would risk for not that much, it turns out. Plague, I feel like plague's probably too far.
Ooh, plague would be too far.
If it was someone's like, hey, there's a 1% chance you get plague if you go to this, Master Sunday or Jays playoff game or something like that, I think I would say, plague is it's just too much.
Yeah, Game 7, Blue Jays, they trade for Jock Peterson, and he hits the home run to win the World Series.
I can miss it if there's a chance I'm going to get plague.
Okay, you could miss it, but how long of a hospital stay would be worth it? A week?
4 days.
4 days. Okay.
Yeah.
4 days. It's good to know. It's good to know. So a bad COVID. A real bad case of COVID.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of plagues, we should highlight that this episode we are going to be doing our second annual baseball seder. We did one last year. I think it was very well received, very medium concept, as I like to put it, I think at the time. And so we'll be doing that soon. But before we get to that, just do our typical roundup of things that have been going on in the Jewish sports world. Gabe, anything been going on that's on your radar the last few weeks?
Yes, I'd like to call to attention an article and a story that's been going on in Canada for the last 2 weeks. It was originally broken by TSN's investigative reporter Rick Westhead, He's won many awards, and he has seemed to decide he wanted to encroach onto our beat and cover anti-Semitism in youth sports with the Avenue Road hockey team facing, anti-Semitism against Don Mills. I think, one Avenue Road going to Don Mills, you probably couldn't get a less Jewish team for them to play. And allegedly, according to Westhead, there's been multiple incidents of anti-Semitism against Avenue Road players, specifically against, playing with these teams. And this is sort of the 12 to 13-year-old. There's some slurs said on ice and including by parents. There's a really great rundown on the CJN website written by our former producer, Alex Rose, whose, I guess, walkabout in the field of non-journalism is over, and he's sort of returned to the roost. We've brought him back. Our producer is doing sort of a sorcerer over the cauldron mime for us now. He's moved to a fish reel.
I think it's a fishing rod.
He's moved to a fishing rod. But Alex has written a great story about it, covering, there isn't much to add. I just want to bring our attention to it. I spoke to some contacts of mine who have coached in this league. They've seen things like this happen before, but not sort of on the parent scale, and that's what makes it a bigger deal. I am an Avenue Road, I'm an Avenue Road hockey alumnus, and being, the reform yet, cultural and I'm going to say,
visual?
Like a ritualistic Jew that I am, the high holidays and bar mitzvahs and such. I was probably the least religious person on the team. So for context, for those who aren't listening, the Avenue Road Hockey League, especially the Select Hockey League, is in an Orthodox neighborhood and is played mostly with Orthodox children.
I think there was something saying that the league is something like 70% Jewish.
Yeah, and I would
obviously not the only Jewish sort of tinged hockey team in the GTA, but among the more Jewish ones, and they don't play on Shabbat.
No, and in my experience, like I said, on my team there were plenty of Reform kids, but there's kids with payas, there's kids with tzitzit coming out of the back of their jerseys, there's kids with kippas under their helmets. Actually, there's one Avi Chaim, and Avi Chaim, if you're listening to this and you played with me, my mom still talks about how good you were. He was like Gretzky out there, skating with his tzitzit flowing. So this is for kids who have not, met with religious Jews very much in their lives from the other teams. This would be quite a shock to see people who, you don't really necessarily engage with in society, playing hockey, especially in sort of a league this public, which is, brings in the noticeability of the story. James?
Mm-hmm. Let's hope it's a learning moment, and, I'm sure that the CJM will continue to follow the story and talk about other goings on if there's other resolution.
And we'll keep you abreast of it as well.
The hockey season, the professional hockey season, is coming to a close. I know we haven't talked about hockey much recently, but going to the playoffs, are there any Jews that people should be paying attention to?
As always, former guest and I guess friend of the podcast, Zach Hyman, is having the best season of his career. Playing with Connor McDavid will do that for you, but maybe cashing those checks at Edmonton and enjoying life out there is helping him. He's going to hit 50 points this year, a career high for him. And Zach is entering the playoffs shortly after Passover. If you want to hear Zach talking about Passover, he'll actually be appearing on our sister podcast, Bonjour High, in addition to us, your Menschwarmers hosts, to talk about Passover. So,
that's great.
We'll bring that back to a link at the end of the show, but just a little tie-in there.
Should also mention, just talking about hockey, reigning Norris Trophy winner Adam Fox is having a very good year as well. 57 assists.
He's got a chance to win it again.
Yeah, he's only 23 years old. This is a guy who's got some really high years ahead of him. And the Rangers, I think, are a team that could do things in the playoffs. They certainly have the fans behind them, and I think they're getting hot at the right time.
Absolutely. So, and they haven't been good in a while. So with their Jewish superstar, at the top of their division.
And as we said before, it's been so long since there's been like a Jewish star in a New York team. So this is like a real opportunity for Jewish New Yorkers to rally behind,
to get behind hockey. It'd be great to see if those kids from Avenue Road Hockey, if I'm sure there's a From League in New York, but the From Hockey League going to cheer on Adam Fox, that'd be some good stuff.
Yeah.
So
moving over to the round ball, that's going to the playoffs as well. We should say that no Jews are playing in the NBA playoffs, but Israeli basketball player Deni Avdija did play all 82 games this year. So he led the league in games played, along with 4 other people.
It's
notable.
The reverse Chai +1.
Sure. It's something. It's, he got in every game. He's still got a future ahead of him. Excited to see what he does next year. Amari Stoudemire, the assistant coach of the Brooklyn Nets, his team won the play-in game the other night, so they'll be moving on.
He'll be in the playoffs.
To the playoffs, playing the Boston Celtics, so that's exciting.
Also, we'd be remiss to mention the team we cheer for, with future prospective Menschwarmers guest Larry Tannenbaum owned Toronto Raptors. Are of course the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. So let's go Raptors and hug Bud Larry.
Yeah. Aside from that, anything else you want to mention sports wise? We talked about the Masters. Both Daniel Berger, Max Homa made the cut, sort of had blow ups on Sunday. So 49th and 50th place, I think, something like that. Not the greatest finishes, but Berger was in the mix on the first day. I think he got a little saddled by bad weather on the second. And
it's always the weather with our people.
Yeah,
always something with the weather.
Well, it's true. I mean, one of Homa's wins certainly did come at the course in LA in beautiful weather.
Yeah, perfect. It's too hot or too cold otherwise.
We can win desert championships, maybe.
Ooh,
if
maybe there's ever a tournament in the Negev, I bet it'd be won by a Jewish person.
Sure.
So we're gonna take a short break and be back with our second annual baseball seder.
Well, it is Seder week. It is 2 days away from the first Seder, and it is also 1 week past the opening of the baseball season. 2 things that coincide and which are both celebrated by Jews in North America and around the world. Maybe the baseball one, especially in North America. This coincidence is not lost on us. There's a lot of similarities between baseball and Passover that we like to highlight here. And for the second year in a row, we're going to start a tradition of a baseball Passover Seder. I would say that this is not halachically approved per se.
Do
not necessarily rely on this.
Get a Talmudic scholar to bless this. Have you heard the joke about the man eating pork, and the rabbi sees him, and the man says, "Rabbi, did you see me eat pork?" And he says, "Yes." The rabbi says, "Yes, I did." And the man says, "Well, then it's okay. I did it under rabbinical supervision." We just need a mashgiach to kosherify or halachify our Seder.
Right. Well, Seder means order. In baseball, we have the batting order. The Seder order is a little different, but we're going to go through this like a baseball lineup here. So batting leadoff, we have Kadesh. Kadesh is the Kiddush blessing, where we consider ourselves blessed because the baseball season is upon us. Consider ourselves blessed because we get to join together this year, hopefully in person with family and friends. For me personally, it depends on whether or not I test negative from COVID. But we say the first blessing and we pour the first cup of wine. And in honor of the first cup of wine, Gabe, we're going to talk a little bit about the first baseman of the Jewish people, Hammer and Hank Greenberg.
The Hebrew Hammer himself, Hank Greenberg, played many years for the Detroit Tigers. Notably, he won one MVP award.
Right.
And very famously in the Detroit Free Press, they ran a front page of him with the Chag Sameach Shana Tova in Hebrew writing on the front of the Detroit Free Press. Story of that is it was the pennant race. Hank Greenberg decided not to play on Rosh Hashanah, came back after a day of rest, and then hit 2 home runs, or hit the game-winning home run to get closer to the pennant. So Shana Tova to all of the people in Detroit, thanks to Hammer and Hank Greenberg.
And we should say as well, along with being our first baseman, also the first Jew in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
So a fitting player to be the first cup of wine.
Maybe even
first cup.
He was notably a very close friend of Jackie Robinson, and Jackie Robinson Day will be celebrated on the April 15th, the day of the first Seder.
That's great.
I also misspoke. He was a 2-time MVP in both 1935 and 1940.
moving on to the batter on deck, we have urchatz, which is the ritual hand washing. So this has, I think, two meanings here. We have both the we're only 6 games into a 162 game season. Our hands are clean. We're ready for a new year.
Not unlike the pitchers of Major League Baseball.
Right. So the baseball itself had a major urchatz in 2021. Sort of enforcing and cracking down on the use of various sticky substances that pitchers have been using to get spin on their fastball. So, some real urchatz in the baseball year and this year as well. Any Jewish pitchers out there, Max Fried or Dean Kramer, maybe try a little charoset. I don't know if they're cracking down on that. If you have a nice sticky, one of those dried fruit charosets, maybe it's time to try that for a little extra spin.
I feel like any, proper sticky cheating substance has gelatin in it or some sort of non-kosher lard. Right. At least back in the day. So
it's not supposed to be a food substance. They do use boiled Coca-Cola. So maybe try some boiled Passover kosher
boiled Passover Coke.
In the hole, we have karpas. We dip a vegetable representing the hope of spring into salt water to represent the tears of slavery. So it's a new season. There's hope, but there's also bitterness over last year. No matter how your team ended up, whether it's regular season, playoffs, or the World Series, you have to remember that last year is in the past. Braves fans, you can skip this step because you won.
Max Fried can skip his karpas. Jock Peterson can skip his karpas.
Jock Peterson and Max Fried can skip the karpas. And then batting cleanup, we have yachatz. The matzah in the middle is hidden for the afikomen, which children will later find. This reminds us that baseball is a game for children, and it's children who will carry the game forward. This has been a great year for prospects debuting. There's a lot of kids coming up. Just today, Clayton Kershaw was pulled after a 7-inning no-hitter. And it was amazing to see the whole world explode with takes about how terrible that was and how he should have been left in. It's just nice to see people have baseball takes in the middle of April. They feel so strongly.
It is. It feels a lot like the afikomen, where people search for the afikomen, while every sports writer in America searches for a fresh perspective and a nuanced take on Clayton Kershaw being removed from a perfect game.
That's great. Moving on to the 5-hole, we have Magid. In Magid, we pour the second cup of wine, and we tell the story of Passover. So I'm going to tell something about the second baseman instead of the second cup of wine. I'm talking about, of course, about Ian Kinsler, now retired second baseman for the Texas Rangers, for the Detroit Tigers. I think he might have played for a few other teams towards the end of his career.
Team Israel being one of them.
Yeah, so Kinsler was a 4-time All-Star in Major League Baseball, and in 2021, he joined Team Israel in the Tokyo Olympics. Had a significant contribution. He's an older guy towards the end of his career, but had a few hits in the Olympics, and I think was a real mentor to some of the younger guys on the team. And, I think, without a doubt, the greatest Jewish second baseman that we've ever seen.
Absolutely. What a player.
So going on now I apologize for coughing, but going on to tell
that's the COVID. That's COVID.
That's the COVID. So going on to tell the story of Passover, we talk about, instead of the 10 plagues, we have the 10 players, which I will now sing.
Are you
Liar, Bregman, Fried, Kramer, Peterson, Pilar, Efros, Stubbs, Tellez, Eli Morgan.
Do we have specific plagues assigned to each player? Like, is Rowdy Tellez darkness, or maybe Dean Kramer looks like a frog? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. This was not that much thought. I just tried to get everyone in. I think it was started out in alphabetical order, but
they really do sound like Hebrew words when you say them that way.
Some of them do. Yeah. So those are our 10 players instead of the 10 plagues. And now we talk about the rituals of Passover itself. And we traditionally in the seder, we ask 4 questions, or the youngest child often will. So I want to talk about actually our 4 questions from last year to do a quick little recap. They all ended up being pretty significant, Jewish sports or Jewish baseball storylines. So the first one was whether Jock Peterson could become an all-star again. The answer is no. He was not really an everyday player with the Cubs, but he was then traded to the Atlanta Braves, where he had a huge impact in the postseason. So, very interesting to see how he did.
That is a great question and a great answer. It wasn't with the Cubs. Our second question had to do with the big bashing boy chick Rowdy Tellez playing in Toronto start of the season. The question was, can he hit well enough to become an everyday player? Once again, in Toronto, the answer was not yet, but after a midseason trade to Milwaukee, he seems to have really found his place at first base amongst the beer and the bratwurst.
Yeah, that's right. He's having a pretty solid turnaround there, and definitely seemed like a kind of guy who could use a fresh place and just a fresh start somewhere. The third question I asked was about whether Max Fried could be a Cy Young winner in Atlanta. He didn't. He didn't win the Cy Young last year, but again, had a great season. Ended up winning the World Series and pitched the deciding game of the World Series. Had a masterful game in I think it was Game 6, right? That they ended up winning it.
He was terrific.
So that was our third question. And the fourth question was whether or not Ryan Braun was retiring, and the answer turned out to be yes. He ended up
the answer
not
to the fourth question is yes. Is that the child who does not know how to ask? Is Ryan Braun?
I haven't quite.
Yeah,
I haven't quite figured out how to incorporate the 4 children asking questions yet, but that'll have to be in our third annual.
So why don't you take us through the 4 questions of 2022?
Sure. So the first question, how will Israel perform in the 2022 international baseball season? So this is not an Olympic year. It's not a World Baseball Classic year. Israel will be competing in the European Baseball Championship.
As the defending champions, yes?
No. So they lost in the finals last year, but it was the first time they ever reached the finals.
Gotcha.
It's a real opportunity for them to show their stuff. They've already qualified for the World Baseball Classic. They've qualified automatically under the new rules, and there will be a WBC in 2023. But new coach Nate Fish, who took over the team after the Olympics,
another friend of the pod,
former guest on the pod, King of Jewish Baseball, Nate Fish. We'll have to see how he can rally the team and get the team together, because this is a team that's going to want to play games in advance of the World Baseball Classic, and see how they're doing. So how will Israel do? That's our first question. Second question is, can a healthy Alex Bregman compete for an MVP award? He had I think a torn quad or some issue with his quad last year. He missed 2 months of the season. Ended up coming back and contributing to the Astros in their run to the World Series. He was part of, I'm sure some of our listeners will remember, the most Jewish play in World Series history, when he was facing Max Fried and flew out to Jock Peterson. And he is having a really solid start to the year so far. He already has 2 home runs in this early season. Mm-hmm. He seems to have his swing back.
And can he repeat that most Jewish of moments, whether or not he can compete for an MVP award? Personally, I'm very interested in that. But that leads us to our third question, Jamie, speaking of the Atlanta World Series champions.
Right. So the third question is, will Jock Peterson steal the playoff spotlight again? Baseball's a quirky sport, and there's always guys who come up at weird times or have interesting careers and interesting moments in the spotlight. Jock Peterson's like a modern day Jewish Reggie Jackson in the way that he is just, he's won 2 World Series now. He is now with the San Francisco Giants. He's playing a fair amount early in the season and looks to be, if not the an everyday outfielder, certainly going to be playing at least a platoon. The Giants are a good team. They had an amazing year last year.
Managed by
he be a big part
Jewish
of their run
player too as well, or a Jewish
That's right.
person.
That's right. Managed by Gabe Kapler.
A fellow Gabe. Us Gabes really got to stick together. So I'm always in favor of the San Francisco Giants, Gabe Kapler, and in a recent inductee into the California Jewish Sports Hall of Fame, Jock Peterson.
Yeah. And the last question, will Jewish players or managers win the World Series? So Peterson and Kapler out in San Francisco, Fried in Atlanta. Those are probably the big potential.
Tellez in Milwaukee.
Houston.
They're expected to contend.
Yeah. So that'll be an exciting thing to see. There's been a Jewish player winning most of the last several years, and it'll be interesting to see. So unlike with Passover, where we get to answer those questions at the dining table or the wherever we're doing our seders, we have to wait for the whole season to play out in order to answer those questions.
And that's true. Although we are leaning, you and I appear to be both reclining while answering these questions, so we're bringing a little bit of Passover vibes into the conversation right now when it comes to the 4 questions.
Right. Moving on to our next moment in the seder, Rachsa, the 6th, batting 6th. and this is washing our hands again. Again, this is just trying to get that sticky stuff off.
So much sticky stuff. It keeps coming back.
Yeah. Okay, on to the 7, 8, and 9 hitters. I think I said this last year. No one cares about the 7, 8, and 9 hitters, but maybe they care a little bit more because there's no DH. There's a universal DH now. So motzi, matzah, maror, korech, and shulchan orech. I'm just sandwiching them all together, all the food-related ones, and just saying, there's an interesting question there's an interesting question in culinary history about whether Rabbi Hillel invented the sandwich. The Passover sandwich of matzah, maror, and the sacrificial offering.
I saw
that might be the origin of the sandwich, as far as we know.
I mean, I saw a food take that recently that matzah pizza is like the best seasonal food of the year. That just like eating melted cheese on matzah, which is essentially an open-faced sandwich. I'm a believer that a hot dog
that's a good point.
Is both a sandwich and pizza is also an open-faced sandwich. So
that's the philosophical question I wanted to bring this into, which is the hot dog the typical prototypical baseball food? Is that a sandwich?
I think it is.
And has anyone eaten a matzah hot dog? I gotta assume someone snuck some matzah into a baseball game and asked for a Lucy Schneider's. Or Hebrew
National.
A Lucy Hebrew National to stash between some matzah.
So I actually believe I'll give it in further. You don't even need the matzah to make the hot dog a sandwich. I think cheese melted on matzah is an open faced sandwich, but if you just eat the hot dog like no glove, just raw,
no face sandwich.
That's a no faced sandwich. So
you know what it is? It's a choking hazard.
Ooh,
is what it is.
That's true. Yeah. But I think you could just munch on a dog like you would a pickle. And it could be an open-faced hot dog sandwich. And it's a great time to talk about bringing matzah to the ballpark because really, everyone is always putting their peanut shells all over the floor, their empty beer cups. I think us as a people need matzah crumbs to match that because there's no food crumbs like a matzah. And
no, that's true.
Especially, if you're trying to take it places, there's all this like detritus in the bags that's coming out and falling all over the ground and all over your lap, and you have to get up and brush it off yourself. So I think seeing somebody eat, if I see somebody at the ballpark eating a matzah sandwich, they're getting a big thumbs up from me.
All right. Other than that, there's not a lot of baseball food you can really eat. I guess if you eat ketaniyot, you can have peanuts at a baseball game.
Or popcorn.
But if you don't, then there's not much.
I think in Europe, it's a different story with soccer, but I think if somebody was to argue, well, I'm actually Sephardic, but I'm here at this baseball game in Seattle, that's a little less. Although now, you want to talk about food, kosher, and probably kosher for Passover food, there's a halal guys at Yankee Stadium now, which is, notably halal and therefore very close to kosher, and most people would consider it kosher. So you could probably just get a bowl of shawarma there. No rice, ask for no rice, no pita, just shawarma and a couple of tomato slices, and you could have a real good game, real good time with that.
Well, moving on, after the festive meal, we moved to Tzafun. When the meal is over, we stretch and enjoy the afikomen, and this is basically the 7th inning stretch of the seder. We're not quite at the end yet. One last time to grab something to drink and enjoy ourselves. And this is the time when we drink the third cup, and the third cup we're drinking in honor of Jewish third baseman Al Rosen.
Al Rosen, really notable, one of the toughest Jews we've ever seen. By the third cup of wine, most people would be, in tough and I guess feeling a little bold, ready for that classic Passover Seder argument. And I think sort of the king of the Jewish argument when it comes to baseball would be Al Rosen, just because he was such a tough guy. A South Carolinian, real Southern gentleman, grew up between South Carolina and Florida. Fought for 4 years in World War II in the Navy, landed on Okinawa, came back and then went back to North America for the 1945 baseball season after the war, ended up winning MVP in 1953 and winning the World Series in 1948. And quite notably defended and was proud of his Judaism always. You can read more about this in the CJN this month in our article. But Al Rosen was noted to enter the stands and fight fans who would shout anti-Semitic slurs at him. So he was a tough guy and a good third baseman, and that would recommend after the third cup of wine, you're feeling tough in the seder.
That's great. Lots to honor about Al Rosen. And we should say, as the evening grows later, we sing our joyful songs of praise. One of my favorites is haggadah, which we have sort of spoofed this year in our piece about the Gadya, the greatest all-time diaspora Yiddish athlete, in the tournament that we're currently having on the CJN website. And we are currently in the semifinals.
What is this tournament, Jamie? What can our fans do? What's it all about?
So our fans can go online and now vote for who they think is the greatest Jewish athlete of all time. There were 16 at the start, and now it's down to just 4. We're down to the semifinals.
Wow.
We have real great baseball swimming matchups on both sides of the bracket. Sandy Koufax versus Mark Spitz on one side, and Hank Greenberg versus Dara Torres on the other. So the link is the cjn.ca/Gadya. That's GADYA. And you can go there to vote for your choice for the greatest Jewish athlete of all time.
2 days ago, my aunt sent me an email asking me if I had seen that the Canadian Jewish News was running a tournament to determine who was the best sports athlete, the Jewish athlete of all time. And she helpfully suggested that we might want to talk about it on the podcast, maybe have an interview with the person who wrote the article.
That's really, really funny.
So we've got, on one side, as you mentioned, we've got Spitz versus Koufax, the burn bright, briefly bracket, and then Torres versus Greenberg, the longevity, sustained greatness bracket.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
Quite a good debate we have going on here.
Yeah. And one more festive song as we pour the 4th cup of wine, the 4th base, of course, home plate. And we thought we'd honor not as great a player, but an interesting man, Mo Berg, the catcher who was a spy. He had a pretty significant MLB career, and he was also more notable for his spying efforts on behalf of the U.S. government, including 2 trips to Japan before the war, where he was sort of not posing. He was part of an all-star team that went and toured Japan, and he did reconnaissance on Japanese industrialization. They sent him with a camera to take what looked like just souvenir videos, but in actuality he was going there to take some videos about Japanese industrialization. And then during World War II, he was sent to Switzerland and had to decide whether or not to kill Nazi scientist Werner Heisenberg based on whether or not he thought the Germans were close to building an atom bomb, and he decided that he didn't think that it was likely. So
really the world's most dangerous yenta.
Yeah, very interesting guy. We definitely, I'm sure we've recommended it before, but the Nicholas Davidoff biography, The Catcher Was a Spy, The Mysterious Life of Mo Berg, came out a little while back. I still have not seen the 2018 Paul Rudd movie, The Catcher Was a Spy. No one has ever mentioned it to me. It was a box office bust, and it was supposed to be pretty bad. I don't know. I guess we really should. Mark Strong stars as Werner Heisenberg, so...
Wow.
We should probably go see it sometime.
Absolutely. Good that Mark Strong. Is he Jewish? He seems like he'd be a secret Jew.
He's an Italian. He's Italian, I believe. Italian-British guy. But he was in Fever Pitch, which was written by Nick Hornby, who is Jewish, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Although, it's about Arsenal, and Arsenal is not the Jewish team. They're quite the opposite, as a matter of fact.
Right. But that's a significant piece of sort of Jewish sports literature, if Nick Hornby turns out to be Jewish, which I'm not positive about. Anyways, that pretty much leads us to the end of the second annual Jewish Baseball Seder. The last thing to say is the Nirtza. There's 29 teams. They're not all going to reach the promised land, but
some of them might wander in the tanking desert for 40 years.
That's right. But there's always next year in the World Series.
You could even say next year in Cooperstown.
Oh, next year in Cooperstown is not bad.
Yeah.
I have to change that for the future.
I had one question about the songs for you, Jamie, and I'm curious your opinion on this. Which Passover song do you think is the take me out to the ball game of Passover? Like your standard, every team, every single family on earth, doesn't matter how serious or not, just like every single team sings Take Me Out to the Ball Game in the 7-inning stretch. Every Seder. I think every Seder sings Dayenu.
I think it's Dayenu, yeah. I think it's Dayenu, and I think that's a lament for a baseball fan, if we can do this, if we can do that, if we can just make the playoffs, Dayenu. If we can just make the World Series, Dayenu. If we can just win one, Dayenu.
Yeah, if just the Yankees lose. If just the Red Sox, somebody blows out his arm. Dayenu.
Yeah, exactly. Dayenu. So, Dayenu to us. I think that'll be enough of us. We'll catch you guys.
Everyone is saying to this podcast now, Dayenu.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's a lot of fun for us to host the baseball Seder. As always, you can find our work on the Canadian Jewish News website, thecjn.ca. We're produced by Michael Freeman. You can follow us on Twitter at Menschwarmers. And we hope everybody has a very easy, happy, healthy Seder. I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the first Seder since 2019. So the first one in 3 years
to have in person. We hope you get to do it.
And it's very joyous. This is my first opening day in 3 years, especially given that the Jays haven't been able to play their opening days at home recently.
By that same token, we'd like to remind you that despite Jamie's illness, we don't believe you can get it while listening to a podcast. I don't think he'll transmit it to you through the airwaves into your ears. Don't think it's done. I don't think it's transmitted auditorily.
Anyways, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it, and follow us on social media. We'll see you next time.